December 16, 2019. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Zoning Board to be open, adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 15, 2019, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Star-Ledger and the Tri-Town News. Second, on January 15, 2019, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 15, 2019, said notice was posted in the office of the Zoning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and your safety, please be advised that this facility is designed with 2 emergency exits, which are on your right at the front and rear of the meeting room. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues of what the board may legally consider in reaching their decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times.
Thank you, Eileen. Roll call, please.
Yes. Mr. Hughes has been excused. Mr. Mertens?
Here.
Mr. Moretti?
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell has been excused. Mr. Orozco?
Here.
Mr. Saya has been excused. Mr. Cantor?
Here.
Mr. Laughlin?
Here.
Chairman Nansen?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Tropoli, you mind swearing in the professionals?
The record will reflect that Mr. Cunliffe and Mr. Howard have both been sworn to the meeting.
Thank you, sir. Approval of minutes.
There's no minutes this evening.
Vouchers.
No vouchers this evening.
Correspondence.
Yes, I have 2 letters.
Okay.
The first letter is from Sean and Christina Connolly. They're on tonight's agenda. And they had actually asked me previously if they could be carried into next year, but because we didn't have our dates, we carried them to tonight for scheduling purposes only.
Okay.
They are in the process of working to secure their LOI from the DEP, and they've requested that the board carry their application to April 27, 2020, with no further notice, and they've granted the board an extension of time to act on the application through May 31st, 2020.
Okay. Anyone in the audience for case number 1804, Sean and Christine Connolly? Seeing none, this case will be carried to April 27th,
Yes.
2020 with no further notice, and an extension of time has been granted.
Okay. The second letter is from Stephen Hambro. He is the attorney for Tal Holdings 1 LLC and Tal Holdings 2 LLC. He said the applicant is requesting an adjournment of the December 16, 2019 meeting before the Zoning Board of Adjustment. The applicant is continuing to work on the due diligence that was requested by the board at the last meeting. Accordingly, kindly reschedule this application to be continued to either your January or February 2020 hearing date. This shall also confirm the applicant's consent to extend the board's time to act on this application through the end of February 2020. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And because I did have dates, I emailed him and told him what I had, and he said that January 27th was the date he was looking at.
Okay. Is anyone in the audience for case number BA 1407A2, Tal Holdings LLC and Tal Holdings 2 LLC? Seeing none, this case will be carried to January 27th, 2020 with no further notice. Also, the applicant has granted an extension of time.
And that's the only correspondence I have.
Okay. Resolutions. 2019 Yearly Review and Report. Resolution
Probably not.
Right.
mean, they can discuss it if you want to hold the floor.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. As you undoubtedly have in your packet, the yearly report resolution. Has everyone had a chance to read it?
Yes.
What I would ask is if there's any conversation that we have it now, and at the conclusion of tonight's meeting, because we have one final application for the year, we can move to adopt then, and this way we'll have all of the cases on for the year.
Okay.
And that we can adopt that together with the resolution. The resolution is the product of many of your colleagues. My colleagues to my right, board members who have given input, and basically this is what the Rules Committee does. We sit down on a yearly basis and look at the cases that we've had throughout the year. And we make certain recommendations to the council. Although not binding upon the council, it is the duty of the zoning board on a yearly basis for the new members to appreciate that the board does this. It's in the MLUL. Generally speaking, Mr. Chair, I don't know if we still do this, but usually yourself and someone else would give a presentation.
We
at
haven't done it
council.
in years.
But the interesting thing is that
It's happening now.
it's happening. We have, on a yearly basis, stricken things because it's been adopted or ordinances have been changed based on things that happen within this very room, based on applications that we see. So it's a living document. It may look like a lot of legalese and so forth and so on, and but I will tell you that the council, to its credit, has adopted many, many recommendations of the board. So that's something that I just wanted to put on the record for the members that may not be familiar with what it is exactly that document means. So I would ask that the matter just be handled as the last bit of business for the year,
Okay.
unless there's any questions or comment or discussion now. If not, then we can just table that for now.
The only comment I have, Mr. Tropoli, is that, you know, thankfully we have Matt sitting on the sidebar, which is really expedited any of these changes or recommendations because, you know, it's been phenomenal how it's worked the past 4 or 5 years now. You know, having land use sitting on the sidebar. You know, and you do a fabulous job too, Matt. Just throughout the year, just keeping track of everything between Charlie, you, Jen, and Ron. The Rules Committee, we go for the dinner, I think, mainly. It's what it boils down to. Because you guys have done a real great job, you know, actually establishing, you know, the recommendations, and I really appreciate that. I remember in the old days, it didn't work that way. It was like pulling teeth to get anything accomplished. You know, the swimming pool, how long, 5 to 10 years it took us to finally get them to listen to us, but now it's almost instantaneously, you know, things happen, so. Thank you. Board, y'all have any comments or?
No, I just want to add, I concur with what the chairman said. We're lucky to have all of you sitting there, and we do appreciate it. It makes our job a lot easier.
Okay,
I agree with that. I mean, I've learned a lot from you guys. I've been pissed. What is it now? I've lost track because I've been moved up so many times. But I've learned a lot from you guys. You're really informative, and our rulings are based upon a lot of your presentations. So thank you and keep it up.
sir. Okay,
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
okay, sir. We'll vote on that at the end of the meeting. Okay, next case before us is case number BA 1921, Kristen Eason. It's a certificate of nonconformity. Applicant are Kristen Eason as applicant and Robert Peters as owner seeking a certificate of nonconformity for the multiple uses so that they can continue to reside and operate a commercial vehicle repair shop on premises known as Block 121, Lot 1, 4 East 2nd Street. Expiration date, March 11, 2020. Come forward, please.
Mr. Chairman, before we proceed with this, I understand that, again, no one's sworn yet, but I understand that, is it Mr. Laffey you're waiting for? Mr. Howard. Okay, but you are represented by an attorney. Do you know where he is? I think he might have went to the other building, actually. We're unable to reach him. I see.
Well, you want to take a 10-minute break here?
I think we should, Mr. Chair, because, you know, they are a business and they need to be represented, and, you know, they're here, and I'm hoping that their attorney would come, and I'm sure he has definite ideas on how to present his case, so.
Here he is.
Here,
Is that gentleman coming? Mr. Halloran, good evening. The late Mr.
Mr.
Halloran has
Halloran.
arrived. That's okay. Vince, do you need a few minutes to sit down?
Yeah, let's take a 10-minute break
Yeah.
here.
Oh,
No,
I've
how
already
you doing?
announced you as such.
How
Vince,
you doing, Mr. Halloran?
we'll take a
Looking
few-minute
good.
break.
We'll take a 10-minute break.
Very good.
I have an application number.
Okay, Eileen.
The zoning board will now reconvene.
Mr. Halloran, you can have a seat there. You know, your witnesses, you could drag one of the chairs over. Yes, sir. The mic's right in the middle.
Christian, here, you want to take this?
How you been? Getting old, Mr. Chairman. Oh, we all are. I'm telling you.
I have to hold it right up to your mouth, but we need to get you on the record, so everybody has to, like, make sure they speak into it.
Yeah, there's a microphone right in the middle of the table.
And you can pull that closer to you if
slide.
you want.
If y'all pull that up closer to you there, that'll
That's
pick
good.
you up too, so.
Perfect.
Mr. Trepley?
Mr. Halloran, I'm going to swear your witnesses in first, if everyone would please rise. And folks, if you would just stand for a moment, if you can, sir, then we're good. Thank you. Raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. Thank you. Sir, starting with you, may we have your name, please? It's Christian Eason. Okay. Thank you. And, sir, your name, please.
My name is Robert Peters. I'm one of the Peters family.
Okay, thank you, sir. And Mr. Halloran, do you have any evidence tonight? We have an exhibit list other than what was submitted.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay. You may sit.
Before we get into testimony, can I just give a little bit of an overview
Yeah.
as to why we're here? So I met with the prospective owners or the owners a few months ago. They presented what they wanted to do with the property. Just for the new board members, I don't think we've had a certificate in maybe a few months. There's two questions I have to ask myself when somebody comes in for a continuation of use. And, well, is it continuing the current use, and is that use permitted? In this case, the use is not permitted in the highway commercial zone. And is it a continuation of the existing use? Simple answer for me is I don't know. Our file is void of anything on this property. I think you'll hear why from the testimony. When it's in a single family for decades and there's no changes of uses, there's no construction, there's no new businesses coming in and out, township doesn't really have a file. So I think that's mostly why we're here. I'll get into what I think of the application after it's made, but I just want to give you a summary that ultimately, as a zoning officer, I have to decide if something's a permitted use or not. Here, I don't know. There's a potential that for a certificate of nonconformity, if they could prove the use was there before the ordinance was in effect, that made it illegal, then they are entitled to that certificate and that as a nonconforming use. I'm not the one that can decide that, only the zoning board can, because the zone change had taken place more than a year ago. So ultimately, that's why we're here.
Okay. Charlie, real quick, if this was just a commercial use, it would be permitted in the zone, correct?
I don't believe so, because it's two principal uses on the same.
No, hear me out. It
Okay.
says if this was strictly a commercial use, it would be permitted in the zone, no residential.
In the HC, I don't believe that service stations are permitted or garages are permitted use.
Okay.
Yeah, so So we're here because they have two principal uses on one lot. They've got a commercial and they also have a residence. So really, it's going to come down to the testimony. They need to provide that these uses both existed on this property prior to the zoning ordinance coming into place, which is met in 1957.
So the ordinance kind of flip-flops back and forth with this type of use, but there's a lot of, in the older ordinances, there's a lot of conditions. So much square footage, so much this, so much that. So the intent, there are probably certain times in the history that it was kind of a permitted use, maybe not meeting every standard and condition of the ordinance. But the big thing here is that there's never been a mixed use permitted. So the residential use with this commercial auto body use that you'll hear about has never been permitted since the beginning of our ordinance, which is 1957. And the burden of proof will be on the applicant
Okay.
to prove the existence.
Now, in
before.
1957, was residential a
On
permitted
Route 9,
use?
there were residential uses in the first ordinance, yes.
Okay. So if it was just a straight residential, it would still be a permitted use without a commercial use, correct?
With the proper proof, it
Okay.
could be eligible for a certificate.
Now, the other use, since it it's up to the testimony that comes forward. What I'm trying to do is set a ground where we're at with this. At certain times from 1957, it would have been considered a permitted use.
Very close with
In and
maybe
out.
maybe a standard here or there that wasn't met, maybe like a bulk standard on square footage, but there were times that this overall auto body use was permitted in that zone.
Or mechanical,
Mechanical,
not
yeah,
body.
we'll let them
Okay.
just
Okay.
describe that, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Halloran.
Chairman Vince Halloran from Freehold, I represent the applicant. Our position is that the use that's there and has been there since before 1941.
Can you just hold that to your mouth there real
I
good?
say that because Bob Peters was born, is it on?
Yes, you have to hold it, you have to hold it right up to your
Oh my
mouth.
God, I'm not used to that.
Yeah, you got almost,
Bob Peters will testify that he was born in 1941, and his father lived there and was operating the operation that continued till that time, since that time. What you're dealing with is what we call, lawyers call, a prior non-conforming use. This is a non-conforming use, but the point is it was there before you even had zoning, and it's continued. And Mr. Peters and his family has continued that use until the present time, and the purchaser, Mr. Eaton, is going to carry that on. With that, I'd have Mr. Peters
Okay.
testify. Would you give the board the history of that property?
Okay. I'll give you the history of the property. I was born on April 7th, 1941. Since I was very small, I was outside working on my father's machinery. If it was something that would take more than a day or two to work on, you know, it needed a cover, it was brought into the garage. The garage was finalized by the late 50s. I remember my brother having a high school party or a dance in the building to sort of, you know, I don't know what words you want to say, but to, as a get-together so that everybody would know that the building was there. In through the 50s and 60s, machinery was brought into the building, was worked on, work that would require several days of work that you wouldn't want to leave all your tools in the sand. You would want to be able to put all the parts out so you could put it back together the proper way. We were able to put overhead cranes in the building. There was chain hoist in the building at one time to pick up heavy machinery and take parts off of it. Now I understand that the proper way of working on a vehicle is by an electric lift that would lift the truck up or the vehicle up off the ground so you could work underneath of it safely. So some of the stuff was removed for safety, and a lot of stuff was taken out that was not considered safe anymore by current standards.
Mr. Peter, let me interrupt you just a second.
Sure.
This machinery and equipment, did that belong to your dad, or was this other people's equipment and machinery?
Well, it was equipment that we used in our business, and it was also, sometimes people would have a pump would go out, or a well would need to be drilled, and they did not have the funds to have that done. So they would have us work on their vehicles to, fix their vehicles so that they could pay off what they owed us for our work.
So y'all did outside work other than just, y'all's work at that time?
Yeah, we picked up some outside work as far as, working on some people's cars
Okay.
and straighten them out. Because remember that back in that day, in the 50s and the late 50s and early 60s, there wasn't any place where you could get parts or locally or a local place to have any repairs done on your vehicles. So we sort of did that work too, as it were. Mr. Howard.
Now, Bob, did your father live there until he died?
Yes, my mother and father both lived in the house until my father got sick and he was put in a hospital where he passed away. And my mother lived there until she got to be too ill to stay there by herself, so she was put in a nursing home.
Did the business continue? Did they incorporate the business, et cetera? Give the board a little bit of that background.
Well, what happened was, when my father passed away, before he passed away, he had the business incorporated, and he closed that corporation down with the proper paperwork. I don't know where it is right at the outset, but he closed the corporation down, but I continued to work on my own by using the shop as storage of my equipment and working on my equipment and storing supplies that I would take to different jobs that needed work done. I did quite a bit of work for Lakehurst Naval Air Station. There probably is somewhere pictures of some of the work that I did.
We're talking about paperwork, and the gentleman over here said you had no documentation. What happened to your documentation other than the couple of little papers that you did find? You told me there was some cleaning out or something?
Well, I was cleaning out the house, and there was a lot of the paperwork got wet because it was old, and there was leaks in the roof which I had to have repaired, and that soiled a lot of the papers so that the papers got water soaked and they weren't readable anymore. But I have some documentation here that yes, I submitted.
Part of your packet. Did you ever intend to abandon the use that your father always had, the living there and the use of the shop?
No, I never intended to do that. What happened is, lately, because of my age, I've come up with some maladies, such as vertigo, and I have a cataract. So I approached Mr. Easton, and he said that he was interested in purchasing the property.
And as far as you're concerned, does he expect to continue it the way it's been?
Well, no, I don't continue.
No, with Mr. Easton's, his contention to continue on as it's been.
Yeah.
That's all I have with Mr. Peters.
Okay, I got one question. Mr. Peters, you said you took over the business, or you had your own business in your father. Did you do outside work to other people's vehicles? during that time?
Yeah, I think I did. I don't really remember because like I said, a lot of the papers were destroyed from the leaks we had in the roof.
Okay,
So I had a lot of papers on the porch, and the roof of the porch leaked, and it kind of, soiled them up to the point where they weren't usable
okay.
as documents.
Mr. Howard, as far as Mr. Peters, that kind of answers some of your questions there?
Yeah, I think it puts a good level of detail to the use, and I think it's important to note that the use was never intended to be abandoned. I mean, that's the key factor in our ordinance for these non-conforming uses after
Okay.
so long.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Mr. Peters?
Any other from the board? Charlie?
Nothing, Chairman.
Okay.
Now I ask Mr. Eaton? Easton. What's your intention with regard to your buyer, right?
My intention is to actually do less.
You gotta hold it real close to your,
My intention is actually to use it in less of a invasive way than he was using it. I'm not repairing heavy equipment and taking cranes and things apart. I'm rebuilding like old 60s Land Rovers and doing little side projects on Jaguars and stuff like that. That's what I plan to use the property for.
how many vehicles at a time do you plan on having as a
Time?
project?
No more than 2 on the property at the same time, and I would probably be working on just 1 at a time.
Okay. Any body work?
No body work,
No painting? No,
no painting.
okay. What about chemicals, oils, chemicals, any storage other than, changing the oil in the vehicle or?
If I do, when I do drain
Could you hold that
antifreeze,
closer? I have to
Really?
pick you up.
Yeah, very close to your mouth, very close.
Is it on?
Is the green light on?
it says it's on.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe I just have to yell into it.
There you go.
Okay,
When I do drain antifreeze or oil, it's going to be put in a IBC tote, which is a plastic tote that's made to carry way more caustic chemicals than motor oil or coolant.
do you have a problem if the board looked favorable on this to limit the amount that could be contained on site?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Mr. Howard?
Yeah, I mean, even on a residential site, people have in the past put in lifts to do their own oil changes, to do minor work on their own vehicle. This is different because it's commercial, of course, but I don't think it's unreasonable for that level of work to be done based on the prior use.
Okay,
I think like any large storage, I don't think we should get up to a 55-gallon drum of waste oil or anything like that. I think it's got to be kept in pretty small quantities,
Okay.
removed from the site regularly instead of having something sit for several years like that.
okay. And then, of course, he would have to meet fire code. He would have to meet the fire code and
Of course.
inspection.
Yep.
But do you have any issues with that?
No issues with that.
You've been inspected, right? You told me you meet the fire codes now.
Yes, all the fire codes are met right now.
Okay,
I
get the
have
an-
a
annual
annual
in-
inspection by the fire
Cool.
code.
okay, good. Okay, and you're gonna maintain that, just maintain the fire code inspections and everything?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Howard?
I don't have too much else to add. Like I had said, I think the use is pretty consistent. When you have a garage being used for repair work on machinery, I think what's being proposed is fairly similar. I think it is a continuation. I don't think the intensity, I don't think there's any expansion by being on what's being proposed. I don't think the intensity is any more. I think some reasonable restrictions on outdoor storage, which we have mentioned, the amount of waste oil, materials like that, which we have mentioned, I think are very valuable for future enforcement. And then just as a note, we still have an ordinance for noise, vibrations, glare, any other issues that come with a use like this that would fall back on as your baseline for any other future enforcement.
No retail,
Of course, no retail.
no retail.
2 vehicles at a time, I think, is reasonable. So you're not having 3, 4 vehicles parked out front, being worked on at once. I don't recall there being any signage on this site in the recent history. I don't see any on there now. So are you proposing any in the future?
I was thinking about it, I may do something in the future. Right now, I'm not planning on any signage or really any advertising,
Okay.
just the customers that
So
I take care of right now.
for a permitted use, which if the board rules favorably, this would become, even as a non-conforming use, the ordinance does permit 4 square feet of signage.
So we just have to comply with the.
Right, if you wanted to go bigger than that, different things, facade different, then you would be coming back here for a variance.
My suggestion, if the board looks favorable on that, just go see Mr. Howard. He'll kind of walk you through how
Help me
big
out.
your sign could be or where it could be placed, to where you do not have to come back to the board
I
at
appreciate
that
that.
time. Mr. Moretti?
Will you be improving on the lifts? He has lifts there now, was that my understanding?
He doesn't have a lift. His equipment was really from the 30s, and
Oh.
he removed it.
Okay. You know what, lift,
I probably will be putting one two-post lift in the garage. I
Okay.
would have to pour a footing for it.
okay,
It's a thick concrete floor right now. It's a serious floor.
Right.
It's a real shop that they
Right.
were rolling heavy equipment into.
okay. Is there a problem with that, Mr. Howard?
No,
The lift would meet code and all of that
I
problem?
mean, it'll have to.
Yeah.
Have to
That's
get
it.
all building permits
Right.
and everything,
Good.
so.
One other thing to note, now, based on the testimony, I heard that your family had lived in the house for the entire time, right? So I
Yes,
think
sir.
the board may want to consider having outside people live in the house as a rental. I think that is akin to a lot more issues potentially in the future. So if the board wants to touch on that in terms of future enforcement,
He's gonna live there.
Okay.
well, if you could put that on the record, and then the board can maybe consider if that'll be a condition of the approval.
Owner
I do think owner
We do
occupied.
intend to live there
Okay.
at the same
You,
time.
okay, by having this on the record, if you do change, you would be required to come back to the board if it goes out to a rental property.
Yeah, a rental with the commercial use would be a little bit more, there'd be a little bit more
Correct.
conflict. So I think, as a zoning officer, I would bring it back here for some different approvals, maybe a
Okay.
variance, most likely a
Yeah,
variance.
that's totally
Understand,
fair.
okay.
Do you have any will you have any employees, or just you?
I don't believe so. I mean, I have a buddy that's going to help me a lot. He lives in Farmingdale. We've been friends forever.
So can you say that again? I didn't,
Oh, I have a friend in Farmingdale, and we work together on projects and things like that. I'm sure he'll be there, but he's not much of an employee, I guess.
Okay.
I wouldn't really call him that.
All right.
More like an associate that helps me out.
all right, good.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a couple questions. So, as far as the 2 vehicles, are all going to be parked inside when they're not being worked on? There's no parking of vehicles outside in the backyard or anything like that?
Well, inside the gate. So what I would do is it would not be visible from the street. The fence has vertical slats in it. So
Okay.
it blocks all view from the street.
Okay.
I'm able to just pull a car in and simply move it to the left, and you can't see it. It's a large
Okay.
rock lot.
So, but in terms of the use of the site, it's just going to be a maximum of 2 vehicles on the site at any point in time? It's not like you're going to park 2 outside and then have 2 more inside that you're working on?
No, my intention is to have one in the garage that I'm working on,
Okay.
and one waiting to be
Okay.
worked on outside, and then the customer's going to pick that car
Okay.
up.
And so you may have your own personal vehicles with the residential park back there? Okay, all right. And then as far as, like debris or anything that's generated from the site, that's all stored inside, like any waste material, that's all gonna be stored inside the building? Nothing
Yeah.
that's gonna be outside and become an eyesore or anything like that?
The shop is so big, it's big enough to keep everything business related is going to be inside the shop.
Okay. And then I think in your application, Samil, you did make mention that all tools that you're gonna be used are battery operated. You're not gonna have any like air pneumatic,
It's not going
impact.
to sound like a NASCAR race. It's only all electric and battery powered hand tools now. They're very quiet compared to the pneumatic tools of old.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, but you're still going to have an air compressor there, correct?
I will, yeah,
Don't limit yourself. You might need some pneumatic tools, though.
maybe.
You know, But
So if you do, I would just remind the applicant, there's a noise ordinance in the
ordinances.
township, just make sure you're in compliance with that. There's certain decibel levels from, daily hours from till 7 PM, or was it 10 PM, Matt? I
HD,
think it's from 7 AM to 10 PM.
10 PM starts the nighttime
Yeah,
levels.
so just be cognizant of that. If you're going to be working late into the hours, there are restrictions on noise.
okay. Any further, Mr. Howell?
One last thing, based on just the testimony I'm hearing, the proposed use really almost sounds akin to like a hobby where he's making some money on the side. That's the level of intensity that it sounded like to me when we first met. It sounds like, again, nothing's changed. Honestly, if this use had just moved in without coming to the township and looking for the proper approvals, we may have never noticed. We may have never known. This is one that, maybe 20 years down the line, we'd say, where did you come from? And what happened here before? But I think they're trying to do the right thing here. I've given you my opinion based on the testimony that I think the township is comfortable with this. So I just want the board to realize that.
I just have a
Just
quick
could-
question, real quick.
Sure.
This is not a code case, correct?
Correct.
They came to you?
We did not find this. They came to us.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
I just, understanding, this is right across the street from my son's cigar shop.
Yes.
Don't even know they're there. Don't even know they're there. We've been at that location since 2004, and I always looked over at the house, never seen anybody by the house, never see anybody by the garage. I mean, they're very, very low-key. I mean, if he's going to continue that kind of operation, nice.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to clarify a couple things as I'm the
Okay.
draftsman. Charlie brought out a point about outside storage of items. Is the board limiting outside storage to no more than one vehicle waiting to be repaired, or are you taking any position on that?
yeah, that's what the applicant. had
That's
stated.
what he said, but I mean, like, that would be a condition of approval? That
Yeah.
there'd
I
be
would
no
like
more
to
than,
be able to keep 2 customers' cars in the yard.
so you're looking to put a maximum of 2 customers' cars outside
Right.
and 2 inside?
No, just 2 customers' cars outside and our personal cars. on the
Personal cars, I'm not worried about.
We're not talking, we're
Right.
just
We're talking
talking what
about
you're gonna work
Cars
on.
for repair, 2?
Probably 2 cars.
Max 2. Again, I just want to be, Matt, needs to have a baseline. So I'm hearing no more than 2 vehicles in the yard. There'll be no parts storage or anything outside, correct?
Nothing outside.
There'll be a reasonable storage and removal of any oil material, antifreeze and so forth?
Correct.
You either arrange for a removal service or remove it yourself to a recycling center?
Correct.
Is there a dumpster?
No dumpster.
Okay,
Just going through the laundry list of what I've heard, no retail, any signage will comply with the ordinance, no auto body work, no painting, no subletting, owner occupied only. That's pretty much it that I have, unless the board has anything else as far as conditions.
does that sound right, Mr. Howard?
And
I don't know if you're aware of the fact there is 2 storage sheds on the property.
Inside the fence or inside the building?
Inside the individual storage sheds.
Where are they are they on the,
Yeah, what he's saying to you is, even his, while he's running his business, all of his parts, which he has a million of, are inside both sheds and inside the garage. Nothing's
okay, so
outside of the
there's
property.
2 additional
been-
storage sheds?
Yeah,
Okay, they're within the fence, correct?
correct.
Okay.
He's saying
what-
within the garage.
No,
He just said,
Mr. Chairman, if I can clarify, so they do have a shed in the southeast corner of the property, and there is a second shed or accessory, shed-type structure also along the southerly property line. So what you're saying is, if you are going to store anything, it's either going to be inside your building or it's going to be inside those sheds.
Correct.
Nothing
outside.
physically outside in the yards, it's going to be inside some type of structure.
okay. Are the sheds compliant as far as setbacks? Mr. Howard?
We can make that a condition that I have to take a look. I'm not sure their exact location.
No, I know. I don't even know what kind of foundations they are.
He has,
I'm,
the shed that you put up recently built on pilings, right? And that was all the permits and everything for it.
I
For the shed, the one shed that's fairly new, it's 12 by 24.
I just, not
town
to cut anybody off, but I think that we can.
Maybe get a permit.
I think we can deal with that administratively.
Okay.
It's a type of small structure, something like that.
okay. Can
hard
you
to bother,
deal,
yeah.
can you deal with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, well, work, the outside sheds, just, if you're using them for storage, just make sure they comply with whatever the resolution is. Okay,
Yeah, I'll follow up with,
Mr. Howard. Yes,
and figure out what we can and can't do with the sheds that are on the
Okay.
property.
you good with that? Okay, any further, Charles?
So the one thing I would just caution the applicant is, if the board does rule favorably, there's a lot of conditions on here. We've seen properties where people have gotten approvals for things and the use grows and grows and grows. So if you are to expand on it, you would have to come back to the board for a use variance. It's a higher burden of proof. At that point, there could be site plan questions and things like that. So there's conditions, as long as you continue to operate that, and the board rules favorably, should not be any issue. Just keep those in mind.
Are you proposing any outside lighting or anything?
There is outside lighting existing, and that's enough for me. It's maybe one halogen spotlight that
Okay.
shines into the interior of the yard. I don't think there's any light really outside, Bob. Do you know if no light goes outside?
There's a light that comes, the light that is overhead on the peak of the of the roof, of the dwelling, shines just about the entire yard,
Okay.
because it's high enough and pointed out that way. So, the yard is fenced in. It has,
Is the lighting pretty much what you'd expect on like a residential property? Is it associated with the
well,
house and pretty much your
there's-
security
there's-
on the residential property?
Yes, sir. There is a light by the door as you go in that automatically comes on if you get underneath of it.
Okay.
Okay.
It's I forget what they call that, sensor light.
And would you say it's existed for many years and you haven't had any complaints from any of your neighbors or anything like that?
Mr. Howard, have you had any complaints?
No, we have no complaints on record on this property.
Okay. Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Tropley, on a non-conforming, we still need to open to public? Okay, can I have a motion to open to public?
Make a motion to open this to the public?
Motion by Mr. Moretti,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Mertens. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Anyone in the audience wish to come forward, make a statement, comment, or ask a question? Seeing none, can I have a motion to close?
Make a motion to close?
Motion by Mr. Moretti, seconded by Mr. Orozco. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any further from Mr. Howard or Charles?
I've said more than I usually like to at these meetings.
Well, I thought you were going to be the only one here too tonight, but I thanks Charles for coming out. Any questions or comments from the board?
No. Nope.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to approve this application. From the testimony that I received from our professionals and from Mr. Peters, it appears to be a continual use, and with the conditions that we put in the resolutions that we have discussed, I'm all for it.
Thank you. Got a motion by Mr. Mertens?
I second that, with the same statements that Mr. Martin's made, that he just follow the regulations that was put into, that you have to comply with. Good luck.
Seconded by Mr. Moretti, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. Moretti?
Yes.
Mr. Orozco?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Laughlin?
Yes.
Chairman Nansen?
As my fellow board members has stated, I too agree. I think it's actually a less intense use. Has been over the years. This would be a very much less intent. The applicant seeked out to Mr. Howard or to the township prior to conducting a business there to find out what would be allowed, what would not be allowed. But since there is history on the site dating way back, and I'm not going to quote dates because I think it predates any of our ordinances, so, but, you know, it never has been abandoned. It's been there. Thankfully, we have Mr. Peters here. You know, a lot of times people aren't here to be able to put things in on testimony. So yes, my vote is yes on this, and good luck.
Motion carries.
Okay, year-end report resolution. Is there any further, other than this application will be placed on it?
I'm not from my perspective, Mr. Chairman. We had a brief discussion before. So if the board is ready to adopt, then the final resolution of the year, which would be the ESON application, can be added to the report, and then that report can be moved, seconded, and approved. And there's no further discussion. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna seek a motion to add this application to our year-end report and make a motion to adopt it.
I make a motion that we add this to our year-end report and adopt it.
Okay, have a motion. Do I have a second?
Seconded it.
Seconded by Mr. Laughlin. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. Moretti?
Yes.
Mr. Orozco?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Laughlin?
Yes.
Chairman Nansen?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
I second that.
Motion by Mr. Roscoe, seconded by Mr. Moretti. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Zoning Board adjourned at 8:25.
Woo-hoo.